what is your feeling being named the starter, and just how prepare you for this moment?
I think, from the beginning, this is a moment you look forward to as a competitor. But, it's part of my job, to be ready, to be that, sense of hope for everyone to continue to be better and come together and create momentum for each other. So excited for that, but just also extremely focused at doing my job at a high level.
Dylan, how do you think you've managed to stay ready over these first 4 weeks of the regular season?
Yeah, a lot of walkthroughs, a lot of meetings you got to be really tuned into. And then, I think just you look at all the work from beginning of OTAs and rookie minicamp to now, I think that's all installation that you can really pride yourself on and the reps built up. So moments, that build up and then to get here. But, like I said, it's extreme focus on just doing my job at a high level and continue to do that for one another.
Kevin had mentioned that you had received some reps with the starters during the first month of the regular season. Just, can you kind of put like a percentage, like every day, how many plays it was, and how you think that's prepared you, even though you're going to get a full slate of practice reps this week?
I think as much as we could. I think reps here and there throughout practices, but also respecting Flacco getting his reps throughout those weeks. So I think we tried to fit in as much as possible, but I think we also did a good job of that in training camp. So like I said, you got to build those moments up to get to this moment, and I think a great week of prep will set us up for success.
Kevin talked about Joe's leadership still being so important to this team, just like becoming the backup. Just curious from your vantage point, from the day you got here to these first 4 weeks, how has he been able to already just sort of support you to get to this point?
Yeah, what I appreciate about Joe is just it's not his job to be a mentor. It's his job to be a great quarterback, and I think just his openness to answer questions. It's my job to ask questions, right, and search for those answers. But having guys like him, Deshaun in the room, I think are guys that just have played a bunch of ball. So appreciate him for that. And he's a captain on this team. He's still a huge piece of what we do, and we look to him for a lot of things because he's been through it a bunch. So I think there's a ton of respect there for me and a guy I definitely look up to. And it's going to be important to have that going into this week.
When Kevin said that, kept stressing that it's not just one person, right, that's responsible for the offensive struggles. So when you get in there as a starter, how do you go about trying to get everybody to play at a higher level?
Yeah, I think initially it's great juice and great energy, and that starts on Monday, the beginning of the prep week. That starts with just having great meetings, having great practices. So we're taking small sample sizes and bites at the whole thing and making sure that we just focus on what we got in front of us. And I think if we have a great week of prep and we continue to put that at the forefront, I think we'll continue to have that. But like I said, it's not just one person, it's all of us coming together, creating momentum together so we can go, move the sticks and put points on the board.
Dylan, I know you're obviously, whenever we talk to you, you're so process driven.
Mm-hmm.
Aside from just obviously getting those first team reps this week and then most of the reps in practice, does anything change for you this week?
You'd like to say no, but there is a lot of excitement. But with that excitement, for me, it's just extreme focus. And I've been through weeks of prep and a bunch of them. If you go back, but you just continue to attack it with your process and how you want to accomplish that. But I think it's us coming together, like I said, not to be, cliche or keep saying the same thing, but we have to come together and create momentum for each other so that we can create positive plays, put points on the board, and just take it one play at a time.
Did Joe impart any, words of encouragement after the announcement came out?
I think just for us, it's constant communication. Like he's a guy that, you see in every single day. We're in the same position group, and a guy that you appreciate 100% of the time because he's just himself, and he's very even keel. So there's a lot I've learned from him, and will continue to learn from him. But I know he knows, he still has a huge part in what we're doing, and he's a captain of the team as well.
When did Coach tell you that you were going to get the start?
We all sat down and sat in the QB room, and as simple as that.
Dylan, it was pretty clear that at some point the organization wanted you to start a game this season. Obviously, maybe a little earlier than you or the organization might have planned, but was that something that was always in the back of your head, even as you talk about making sure that you were ready at any given time?
I think it's funny because I got a text from a good buddy of mine, and he sent me a picture of a fire station, and like, it's kind of like, why are you sending that, But when he sends it, he just lists the obvious, right? Like, doors are open, garage doors are open, like, things are ready to go, and like, they're just waiting on that phone call to like respond surgically. And like, just what a great representation of like the job I had and being ready for that moment. And I think, I smile because it's like a moment you prep for and you are extremely excited for, but also got to realize that it's extreme focus. And that's what I've continued to harp on. But you wait for the perfect time, you're going to wait a whole lifetime. So for me, I've always been ready for every moment.
Dillon, just going back to these first 4 weeks and like the prep of it all, I know sometimes rookie QBs, they step into that backup role and it becomes kind of this big learning experience that maybe you wouldn't have expected initially. I guess just, was that the case for you? How has that been for you in terms of taking on what you did as a backup those first 4 weeks?
I think the biggest thing is just change of perspective. I think, when you're behind center, it's kind of, attacking the day of what you need to do. And sometimes you let things slip through the cracks for what's most important and order of operations that way. But I think when you change the perspective, you can kind of look at the whole preparation as a whole and how you can get better, how you can best support your teammates, and maybe when you're not the starter in a different status, can you still lead and create momentum for one another? So that was a big challenge for me, one I took on wholeheartedly, and I will continue to take on whichever role.
Just Brian Florida's defense, he's got a great reputation of confusing all kinds of quarterbacks. So what do you see, and how difficult is that for your first NFL start?
Yeah, a lot of respect for what he's done, but even this year, I think he's just a unique defensive mind and has created a lot of turnovers, a lot of negative plays, confusion, like you said. But I think it's just gonna be a great challenge for us all, coming together, and we got a lot of respect, in how we attacked our craft with diligence, and want to make sure that we're ready for that moment. But like I said, a lot of respect for our competition.
What challenge did the compressed timeline this week? You got to go to London, probably a little shorter practice today. You're not going to do maybe a normal practice on Thursday. Same thing with Friday. Just what type of challenge does that present for you, and how do you handle that?
Yeah, it'll be different, but one we're looking forward to. There's challenges week to week in any given week, but one that's just unique. But I think like I was saying earlier, the excitement for being able to play in London, new fans, new environment. I think that'll be a lot of fun. But also just I think they've educated us a bunch on how we need to attack this, and we'll continue to do so.
Dillon, I know everyone always talks about your processing, but your mobility specifically, I mean, what do you think you can add to this offense if you guys have been struggling with that aspect of your game?
Yeah, I think it's a combination, and being able to ad-lib, confidence as using your legs as a weapon it is real, in this day and age. But I think it's a great combination of a lot of things. You want to use it when you need to, not when you just feel like doing it. So I think moving when necessary is important, and have confidence in that, but also throwing and make sure we're running the offense the right way.
Let's take a couple more.
You stepped in late in the fourth quarter in week 2 and 4, and I know how could those experiences, though, just being able to take the field in a game setting like that help you as you head into this week?
Yeah, more turns at it, as Coach Muss would say. The more turns you got, the more confident and comfortable you are in certain situations. So, super glad I was able to get those turns, and want to continue to build on that, and we will, throughout this process. But like I said, a whole week of prep, going into a game, knowing the job cold is my job, and I'll continue to do that, and excited for it.
From your vantage point back to practice now, film and in those limited settings, what's the biggest difference you've noticed between pro defenses and college defenses?
Definitely personnel. I think 1 through 11, obviously, but I think there's also confidence in their pass rushers, and I think you see that every single week, and your ability to protect, your ability to make them be on their toes consistently could help you, and you just want to continue to do that. But that's definitely a challenge.
Dillon, Jerry was obviously a little frustrated after that game on Sunday with some of his drops. How important is it for you and him to get on that same page quickly and for him to really kind of get going for this offense?
Glad you asked. I'm the biggest fan of Jerry. I would be surprised to find anyone that thinks more highly of him than me. Just the way he works, the way he attacks his day to day, but how much he loves the game as well. He shows his passion, and he's a guy that we're going to rely on. I'll continue to rely on, and a guy we'll feed because he's a big part of what we do. So I think as we continue to build it, it'll be building reps together in continuity, but I think that'll grow as time progresses.
Do you feel like the rest of that room's kind of in a little bit of flux with Said going on IR, DeAndre on IR, and then you call up a couple guys from practice going?
I think it's having that mentality of next guy up and everyone being prepared for their moment. And, uniquely enough, I'm doing the same as them. So I think we're both in that same position. But, I keep going back to us coming together and making sure that we continue to do that will be our biggest point of emphasis, because we need to do that. And the more we create positive plays and let that continue to stack on each other, then good things will happen. But small bites at a time.